actually is broadcasting. Oh, actually starts broadcasting before. Okay, all right. So what I want to do is basically a general kind of workflow for both statistical analysis, so figuring out whether something is happening in the data or not, and for more kind of predictive machine learning, where you have the expected labels and you want to get to something there. I'm going to try to do it in a kind of modern way. Here's the thing, right? So the traditional workflow for someone who is not a statistician is to go and get a statistical consultant. The reason is that items number 2 and 3 and 5 are actually quite tricky to do. At the same time, kind of if the problem is genuinely difficult, you'll just have different opinions from different statistical consultants as well. What we'll try to do here is we'll try to model kind of looking things up with an LLM and then trying to verify that the LLM is not completely out to lunch. Kind of recognizing that like statistical consultants are quite often out to lunch. And like the second example that I'll give would be kind of an example of that. But yeah, anyway, so in general, kind of you have some predictor variables. So if it's an experiment, those would be settings that you just set for the different experiments, and then you have variable of interest. Like maybe you're interested in whether some predictor is actually associated with the variable of interest, stuff like that. You then want to figure out what is the appropriate model. So what we had in this class was like, well, like maybe it's just like linear regression because the scatter plot looks like it's a cloud that kind of looks like a line. Maybe it's something more complicated where, for example, you think that like with the radon example, that actually the structure of the data is kind of nested, where you have different slopes in different counties in the state of Minnesota, whatever. So once you've decided on the appropriate model, the test statistic, if it's a textbook model, would come automatically with the model. People have figured out both the distribution, both the test statistic, so the thing that the quantity that you compute. For example, the difference between the beak depth in whatever it was, 78 and 76. The usual test statistic is that divided by the standard deviation, right? And then you have a distribution of a statistic that's associated with the null hypothesis. So for example, if the null hypothesis is that the difference between the beak depth was 0, then the difference should be distributed like the t-distribution, which is basically the normal distribution. Once you have that, you can compute the p-value. So you want to check whether the data actually looks like the model. So if you assume some model, but the data doesn't look like what the model predicts at all, that means that the model doesn't fit. Sometimes, honestly, mostly in the case of linear regression, there's diagnostic plots that you can get just by calling an R function. So that's what we had with linear regression, often not. Then you have a p-value, which you can compute either with a pre-made function, that would be the usual thing, or like if it comes to that, you can do a fake data simulation, meaning you assume the null hypothesis and you generate the data from the model, and then you compare what you see in the fake data simulation with the actual p-value that you have. So you then want to identify whatever limitations there are. So if you are trying to figure out some causal connection between, x1 and x2, then just the linear regression is just not going to tell you that. It might be that it's x2 that's causing x1 and not the other way around. It might be that there's a different variable that's causing both. So there's like all sorts of things that could happen. There could be a very complicated causal structure as well. The data ordinarily is just not going to tell you that. So sometimes there's hints. So if you see that, you know, the radon looks just different in different counties, that would imply that the county structure is actually important, but sometimes not. So, okay, I want to do an example. So that's like a quite famous example, which makes it difficult to pretend that this is the first time that you've seen it, because if you just copy and paste the description of the data set into Claude or whatever, it'll just tell you, oh, that's a Pygmalion example. People know about it. Anyway, so Pygmalion, for people who don't know, that's like an ancient Greek myth about I guess, like a guy who made a sculpture who he then fell in love with, and then she came alive, or possibly the other way around. I don't remember. Anyway, it did not happen. There's also a famous, you know, George Bernard Shaw play and movie, My Fair Lady, which is like kind of loosely based on the myth, or like reinterpreting it, whatever. Okay. The Pygmalion effect is separate from it. It's more like a famous experiment. So the hypothesis in that experiment was like this. So the hypothesis would be that if you tell a teacher, so in this case, a training officer for soldiers, that the students, in this case, the soldiers, are in some way special, then the teacher would unconsciously somehow make it so that they actually become better. So like if you told me ahead of time that I'm getting an exceptional group of students here, I would teach better or something, or maybe I would just assign better grades, right? So the experiment was like this. So there was a company of soldiers, and well, apparently the company is subdivided into platoons. I don't really know how that works, but a platoon is like a subset of a company. A company is a larger group. And each of the 10 platoons, so a group of soldiers, was either assigned to the Pygmalion treatment group. So the treatment group was a group where they told the commander that the soldiers were, you know, did better than usual on some tests that they gave them, or they were just assigned to the control group, meaning they did not tell the commander or the training officer that there was anything special about them. And then they measured the outcomes for the soldiers. So there was some kind of like practical specialty test that they gave the soldiers after some period of training. So this is the experiment. So there is data, which we'll look at in a second. And the question is, does it work? So does it happen that if you tell the officer that the soldiers are special, then the soldiers become special by the end of the training period? So, okay. So we'll go and get the data. Right. So I usually use to type. I think in this lecture, I think all of you now have an agent that's kind of working. So I encourage you to kind of work along with me and see what's going on. You can do it in whatever language you want. This would be I create like Pygmalion R&D here, and I will just tell it to read in the data and visualize it. So one thing that I will tell it, just like to make it more realistic, is to pretend it doesn't know what's going on. This is 1302 from Statistical Sleuth. So Statistical Sleuth is just the textbook. So I'll just do that. And again, kind of code like try it along with me. Hopefully we'll get kind of something interesting. Obviously, for different people, it might be slightly different. So it was doing it online. So I'm just telling it to dump the results into the RMD so that it's preserved. It just stopped it working with escape. Oh, I didn't actually change the folder. Okay. All right. So we are over here. So okay. So I need to run it in this. It still doesn't work in mine. Okay, it actually ran the HTML. All right, sorry. So it actually did run it. So I just opened the HTML. So what happens, which like maybe you saw it before, maybe not, it generates the HTML file. I told it to open the HTML file. So this is the data. So it's 29 by 3. So we have kind of the company. So there is several different companies. There's treatment and there is the outcome score. So the treatment is Pygmalion. So they told the commander that the soldiers are special. And there's control. They did nothing. And we have kind of two different. So we have I think actually more companies than that. So we have kind of several companies, and which within those we have platoons where it's either Pygmalion or it's not Pygmalion, right? So there's 10 companies. That's right. So here it just generated something. So not anything that they asked. We don't necessarily need to review this code just because like it's probably right these days. Like if you use a good LLM, like if that's the computation, like this function is almost surely correct. But it's also not difficult to read. And here you have kind of the mean score for the control and the mean score for Pygmalion. It helpfully computed the difference between the mean score for Pygmalion and for control, and that turned out to be 7. So one thing that you can do here with the tools that you have is say this is the same as the big depth thing, right? Because if you ignore the companies, basically you have measurements for Pygmalion, measurements for control. If those are approximately normally distributed, you can do the difference. The issue here, and this is why it's a textbook example, is you might say, hey, like maybe the companies are actually systematically different, right? So the first question that I would ask is, okay, and there's kind of multiple designs. There's like a classical solution, which I'll show you. You can just say, okay, I'll just control for the company, right? And that would be like maybe a not unreasonable thing to do. You can also say, okay, like what's a good model for accounting for company effects? And just kind of see what it says. Um, so here it actually, this is very small. Can anyone see this? Probably not. Okay, it then increases both. Okay. So it actually, so it suggests two things. So one thing it suggests is what's in the textbook, which is a randomized block design, which is kind of whatever. You can do that. So the other thing it suggests is conveniently another thing that we actually saw in this class, which is random effects, right? So what it says is, okay, like the model is the score depends on the treatment. So this would be, because the treatment can be just one of two things, Pygmalion or control. So this would be, plus something for Pygmalion, plus something else for control. And then what it says is there is also a company effect, but it's a random effect. So what does it mean that it's a random effect? It means that we are saying it's probably zero, but we'll sample like a coefficient for the company from a normal with a sigma squared. The sigma square would be determined from the data, right? The full model would be it's like really nice chart. So the full model would be normal from, oh, this is the Japanese chalk, that's fine. And this is like the Hagoromo chalk thing. So yeah, that is really nice. You can try it during the break. So this is normal from a effect plus a CI. Right? Does that make sense? So for every company, we determine the coefficient for the company. So like maybe some companies are better than others systematically. And then we say, okay, so the score is going to be centered around the effect, whatever is the coefficient for treatment and control. And then we'll add the company coefficient that corresponds to row line. Yeah. All right. So so that's convenient. So we can say, okay, so do the random effect model. So in general, it kind of did a little bit of a bad thing. It ran the model before, and now I tell it to just run it. This is kind of encouraging you to engage in questionable practices because it already tells you the result. In general, what you want to do if you're running kind of a serious study is ideally pre-commit to a workflow before you actually get the data, because here what's going to happen is you run one model. If you're happy with it, you're probably if you're happy with the outcome, you'll report the result. If you're not happy with the outcome, you'll say, like maybe that was a bad model, I'll try a different one, which would inflate your kind of false positives, because naturally people just want to get something that works. So, okay. Okay, I told it to pretend that it doesn't know what's going on, but it clearly figured it out. So here it estimated the coefficient for the Pygmalion effect to 7.12. It also estimated the between company speeds, so that's this guy, to be this. Those numbers don't really tell you very much because you don't know kind of on what scale the score is even. So let's do this first. So I'll say like report the analysis. And I'll also say show the overall distribution of scores. So really what you kind of want to know is how much does the effect matter compared to just random noise. So the right comparator is the 6.55, right? So this says, what's this guy? And this guy is how much do the scores differ, even if those guys are the same, right? So that's kind of the right quantity to ask for, like, is 7.12 a lot or a little? The answer is it's about as much as people differ between themselves on average. So like if you take the standard deviation for a group that's as homogeneous as possible, they'll vary between themselves by 6.55. And also the actual Pygmalion effect is like shifting everyone by one standard deviation. So actually quite a lot according to this analysis. So what I'll do in order to visualize it is I'll say, okay, like within this so within like a fake company, show me the distribution. With the residual SD. And just like, like, and also separate pair of histograms for Pygmalion and non-Pygmalion. Hey, it's all right. Maybe 7 minutes. Okay. So we can take a look. So this is kind of the usual LMER that we have. So this is what we've done before. So I wanted to look at the overall distribution of the scores. So this is the overall distribution. So if you were like, to be honest, I don't really believe that this experiment, I mean, like this is real data, but I don't believe that if you tried it again, it would come out again like this. But be that as it may. So this is the distribution of the scores. So if you remember, our estimate for how much the score shifts due to the Pygmalion effect is 7. So on its face, it's quite a lot. right? So this is like going from an average of whatever 74 to like 80, 81, I guess. So quite a lot. So what I asked it to do is to say, okay, like, what would it look like if you had like a fake company? Sorry, this is within company. Okay, so here it said like within a fake company, and then it distributed it. Oh, okay, it did distribute it as with just as the residual, which I would check that it did it correctly, but yeah, I believe it did. So it says like residual 6.555. So this is like not all the scores, which is spread out more, but just scores with this standard deviation, just to visualize what it would mean to move by 7 here. So this would be like you're taking this kind of class and platoon, I guess, and you're shifting here. So a rare hallucination, because this clearly should be platoon rather than company, right? Because the platoon was the unit. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so this is this is within company. This is like a lot of fake platoons. So this is right. Okay. And now what we asked is just like actual how things actually split in the actual data. So this is the histograms of the actual data, where we have kind of the control platoons and we have the Pygmalion platoons, which look like this. Make sense? Okay, so it should be that, we should do some kind of checking of whether the model is correct or not, because right now we just got a number out of this model, so we fit the best coefficients, but that's all we have done. We have no idea whether the data actually looks like this or not, right? So what I would do in this case with this model is I would say, okay, the structure is actually not that bad. So I can look at, so I want to look at, and this is kind of a custom part of the analysis, which like for this one, I kind of know the answer because I'm familiar with the model, but like you would have to think about it every time. So what's going on here? So here we have a company coefficient, and the claim here is that the company coefficients are distributed normally. So the way we would falsify it is if you look at the different companies and they are mostly clustered around here, and then there's like a wide outlier. That would mean that it's probably not normal, right? So it also claims that within a company, the platoons are distributed normally. Again, like what would falsify it is either if you see kind of one company is like this, another company is like this, another company is like this, and another one is kind of like this. So that would make it so that the sigma squared s is not actually constant. So here, there's probably almost no way to see it because there's like 3 platoons per company or something. But maybe sometimes maybe you would see kind of some kind of spread. So the spread here would usually be, given that you have very few data points per company, is like you would just have like an outlier, but that would also break the model. So let's see. So what we would ask for is to get us the distribution of the averages per company. That doesn't quite give us what we want, but it could falsify the hypotheses, right? So this is kind of like model checking. So I would say like plot the histogram of the means. Actually, instead of a histogram, let me do like a box plot. I don't know, have I think I've shown you box plots, right? Have I? No. Anyway, it's very intuitive. You'll see what it is. So this is going to be for each company. I'll say like for each platoon, but grouped by company. And then, sorry, for each, this is going to be a group, sorry, so for each company, and then grouped together by, so I'll just say sorted treatment. So I'll get like all the data points, but there's gonna be like all the Pygmalion or the non-Pygmalion. So I'll see kind of both things together. And say all in the same figure. And then what we wanted is this guy. So I'll say plot the residual for each platoon. So the residual for each platoon would be this guy minus this guy, which should be Gaussian. A lot of thinking. So I guess people don't know. So the tokens displayed here, what's going on is it's outputting character by character, and it's doing chain of thought. So the thinking is it's outputting text, which is reasoning out what the final output should be. So the number of tokens that's displayed here is kind of like how much text it generated in the background before it actually generated the code. So here I kind of had my own idea of what kind of plots to make. You could obviously also ask the language model to see what it comes up with. All right. All right. So here we have kind of the distribution for each of the companies. So the situation is in each of the companies there was one Pygmalion platoon and then two control platoons. So what would falsify the model is if the differences between the gray points were like widely different between the different companies. You might ask, what does wildly different mean? So that's a judgment call. There is no rule, although you can ask for a ruling from an LLM. I assume it's applied its own ruling. In general, I would say it should be different by like an order of magnitude in order for you to really notice for this kind of thing. But it's kind of a judgment call, so you don't see anything that's really smushed together so that you don't see that they're separate. You don't see anything that goes out of the plot, so I would say probably okay. With the Pygmalion, we can't actually tell because the Pygmalion ones, like maybe the Pygmalion effect is different depending on the company. If that were the situation, there would be absolutely nothing that we can do about it. I also asked for the residual for each platoon, and what we see here. So it decided to it decided to display it not as a histogram, but just as a bunch of points. So a histogram would mean that you take all those points and you see how far they are from zero. So you can imagine just like bringing all of them to the left and making a histogram, right? It did not make the histogram, but like you can kind of tell that it's fine. There is no huge outliers, right? So a huge outlier again would be like all the points are here, and then there's like one that's like way up there. So there is a natural thing here that's going on where the scores are probably out of 100. So you couldn't possibly have an outlier that's like larger than 25. At the same time, down, you actually could have an outlier. And in grade data, you see that. So if a student just stopped showing up and stopped submitting, which sometimes happens, and they get like a 3 out of 100, like that's like a thing that sometimes happens because they didn't drop, but still, like they kind of effectively dropped, but didn't actually officially drop. That did happen. That would be an outlier that you would actually want to remove. But here it was a test. I guess in the Army, they're stricter than at U of T. So like everyone writes the test. So yeah. All right. So this is that. So I would say that's kind of an example of an analysis. Does that kind of make sense? So again, I kind of picked a thing that we were familiar with already. In general, kind of you encounter a new thing, you can ask an LLM, like, what does this look like? It might or might not say, and it might or might not be right. I would say that currently, just kind of blindly plugging in data, like it actually gives you the answer without doing model checking, as you saw, like it computed the answer. That is bad. If you tell it to do model checking, it probably will. I did not try to do it a lot, but that is obviously something that needs to be done for the analysis to be like anywhere close to valid. All right. Questions? Is that good? All right. Don't you wish someone had told you that you're elite like a year ago? So, yeah. Okay. So I'll do another example, which is like a little bit of a hobby horse of mine, but I think I'm right. So this is slightly different. So this is, again, actually to do with teaching. So this is a paper from the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. This is like an extremely prestigious journal that's like, it's like below Science Nature, but I think, or like whatever Cell. But other than that, that is where you want to be. So the claim here is they want to measure the learning versus the sense that you're feeling that you're learning in active versus non-active learning classrooms. So active learning classrooms is classrooms where you're made to do exercises during the class. And then this is in contrast to what we're doing right now, which is me speaking and you listening. So the usual claim, like that's something that people often find and that I believe is true, is that students generally, on average at least, enjoy the non-active classrooms more. On the other hand, a claim that's maybe a little bit contested, but that's generally believed, is that they actually learn more in the active learning classrooms. I personally think that a lot of this has to do with how you measure the learning, because if what you do during class is make people do the same exercises that you give them on the exam, and then you give them an exam, then yeah, the students who you force to do the exercises are going to do better in the exam, which has the same exercises. On the other hand, if you try to see whether the active learning transfers what you would actually have to do is you would actually have to have exam questions that are on purpose substantially different from what you did in class, which nobody would actually ever do just for the sake of the experiment, which kind of breaks things a little bit, in my opinion. But that's kind of an outside limitation, right? So what I wanted to focus on is something different. So I want to look at table 3 here. So here what they're doing is they are predicting the feeling of learning and the what does TOL stand for? I'm not sure, but this is like the test performance, I guess. And here what they're doing is they're predicting what's called the standardized Z-score. So that's kind of the same thing that I told you about informally just now, where what you're doing is you are looking at the score. So either kind of the Likert score that they report for the feeling of learning. So Likert means like strongly agree, neutral to strongly disagree, and those are like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you average whatever. The test score is just the test score, and then you divide by the standard deviation so that what you're predicting is always a normally distributed, an approximately M01 kind of variable, right? So then what this table is saying is so what this table is saying is FOL is whatever, like 0.34 plus 0.56 for active. Yeah. 5, 5, 6. 3, 4, 5, 6, yeah. Times I active. Plus whatever this. So they had, I guess, several topics. So this was a physics class, so they had like a fluid section and static section. And so, right? So, and then you have like a noise thing at the end, right? So this is what this model means. And then the claim here is the feeling of learning decreases by 0.56 if it was an active section. And does that make sense? So on the other hand, the test here, again, it increased by 0.46 if it was active. So on the scale of whether it matters or not, this is about half of the Pygmalion effect, right? So the Pygmalion effect was 1 standard deviation. Here, the effect is half a standard deviation. The way I know is they standardized the scores, right? So the scores are all distributed like N01. Is that making sense? Sorry, if I'm talking too fast, let me know. So yeah. All right. So they also had kind of various other variables. So for example, you might imagine that what's being measured here is just the outcomes, but what if the classes are different? Like what if the sections are different in terms of their previous knowledge? So they actually test for that. So apparently like the pre-test thing was completely the same. How they asked for feeling of learning as a pre-test, I'm not sure. I guess they could just ask you like, how do you feel about the class as you're walking in? I think like there's like another study which indicates that I don't know about as you're working in, but that like in the first couple minutes of the class, you actually know how you're going to feel about it at the end. So yeah, but I guess this study kind of refutes that actually, right? So the other study that I'm referring to, that's like a quite famous one where they ask students within the first few minutes of the class, like in the first lecture of the class, like how do you feel about the class? Like how would you rate it? And then they try to correlate it with the ratings that the students give in the evaluation at the end of the class. And it turns out, at least kind of the headline result, is that whatever you feel in the first few minutes is kind of what you feel at the end as well. So this kind of refutes it in a way because the difference in the FOL for the sections was like 0. But then there was a difference depending on whether it was an active learning class or not. So yeah, but again, this is just one study. Who knows? So okay. So this is the model. So one thing that to me seemed kind of weird when I read this study is, okay, like you have your FOL scale, which I do think makes sense, but you have your TOL scale, which is just like one single test, right? So is it possible, I started wondering whether this is due to how you tested the students. And if you had a different test with different questions, would the outcome be plausibly different? This model doesn't account for that, right? So this model is saying your TOL is whatever, and the only way that the prediction would change is if you switched from active to passive, right? So one thing that you could do in order to kind of audit it, and I should acknowledge this is going on YouTube, that's fine. But one thing to audit it is to say, okay, but what if I thought about all the possible tests that I could give? Plausibly, how would those tests differ? And build that into the model, right? So I should say this is not a charitable way to read this, because if I start saying things like that about almost any study, like, hey, did you try any other tests? And like, so it happened, a lot of the text would go away just because the sample size is so limited. With that said, I don't think it's like unfair. I think they kind of invited, given that this is their headline result, which is kind of strong in a kind of a prestigious journal. Here is the analysis that I would propose. Again, this is not the only possible analysis, but it's the kind of thing that I think I would think about. Is okay, so feeling of learning and belief, I'm focusing on the TOL. So TOL, I would say, is this coefficient that has to do with the test. And then I'll add all of those other constraints, right? So this would be whatever, like, and so on. But then I'll say, okay, I could have given different tests, and I want to estimate how those tests might differ. So that's my model. So the problem here is that if you kind of based on this thing, I should double check whether they did do several tests, but certainly not for certainly not for the same section. So I have no way of estimating AT because I'm talking about one test that was actually given, and then all sorts of other hypothetical tests that could be given with possibly different scores. Right? So the only thing that they do have is kind of the difference between the tests that were given for the scores that were given in passive and active. So that gives me kind of an idea of how different class settings respond to different tests that could all be attributable to genuine learning. Right? But there is kind of a learning style test match or mismatch. So this I would have to kind of guess based on prior experience. So I would say, like, how do tests that are on average the same, how could the average on those tests differ depending on the match between the class and the learning style? I would say kind of, like if the average test score, so this is Harvard, and they have like a different scale than U of T. So an A at Harvard is like 92 and up, I think, or 93 and up. Usually, I think they now have a policy where I think like at most 20% A or something. So they changed it recently. So now it's curved. But anyways, so let's say the average is like 85 usually. So how would it differ? Like, I wouldn't say that it varies from like 80 to 90, but I would say that it's plausible that it would go from like whatever, like 82 to 88, like easily. Right? So so 82 to 88 means that kind of 2 standard deviations is 3. So this would be like whatever, like 1.5 or something. All right, so I will now do the analysis. So I know how many of you know, you can just take a screenshot and paste it into VS Code. Let me do a new Claude session. So I want like fake data. So this is kind of vague. So I'll just tell it like, ask me for details if you don't get it. It's like a lot less work than writing code yourself. But we'll see how it works out. It's kind of stochastic. All right. So very conscientious. So, okay. So what is the grouping variable? So here it asks like, where is the random effect? So the random effect, the terminology again is the random effect is this guy, right? And the options it suggests is class section. So each class section gets random effects, student, instructor, or topic semester. So what I want is like none of those. No, actually I want yeah, so I actually want class section. So we give a different test to, sorry, not class throughout. This is difficult. So yeah, so what we want is like different styles for each instructor at each time. So okay, so the outcome is the test. So how large should the simulate be? So here, so we actually want yeah, so we want the same scale, so 300 students, 12 groups. So what I'll do is I'll review the code that it will have generated. Then what I want to do is I actually want to find how are the findings different depending on rerunning the experiment again. So now it's going to generate just the one set. I'll then generate multiple sets, and I'll see how the effects vary, how the effect varies. Okay. So for each instructor semester, we have one test. The outcome is TOL, 300 students. Yeah, yeah, this makes sense. All right, let's see what it came up with. Here is what we have. So we have the coefficients. So the coefficients are all the same. It got the residuals from the table, which is good. So it then generates it generates just like random data for like pre-test, midterm, stuff like that. So it then draws the random effect. So where is the random effect here? Okay, so it's called random intercept. Okay, so it's called U. So the random intercept would be U, and where is U? Oh, it's added like so, and then it's actually RE. So it generates it using sigma RE. So one good reason that I'm auditing it is I don't recall ever saying what I mean for sigma RE to be, and yet it somehow seems to think that it knows. So let's see what it decided for sigma RE. Oh, did I say? Oh, I guess I said 1.5 because it does say 1.5. Okay, so that's good. And then it just generates it in a way that probably makes sense. Let me see. So here it says TOL is all of this stuff plus the art. Okay, so that seems good. I would double check it. Like if I ever write a letter to the editor about it, I will double check it. We'll see if the outcome is the same as what he tried before. So what I want to do is I want to now generate 100 data sets of 300 stints and plot the histogram of the estimated beta active. So beta active would be this guy. Oh, I'm excited. All right. So let's see what it came up with. So not actually not actually so bad. So based on what we see is it kind of says, okay, like the central estimate for the effect is about the same, which is what you would hope is the case. Like we hard coded in the effect from the study. It's supposed to be the same, but it says like if you try to do it again, then it can vary this much. So this by itself is fine because the table itself already had uncertainty, right? So here it says that it's like as statistically significant as it could get. It doesn't say the standard deviation, but I think it's somewhere else in the study or in the supplementary materials. We can, however, just reproduce it. So what I can do is I can say, okay, considering this model, which makes things more uncertain than they otherwise would be, can I just estimate the uncertainty on this guy and see if it's still significant, right? So what we'll say is so using linear regression as well as using a random effect model. So my point is, if you use a random effect, the confidence interval would be wider. So that makes sense. Right. Yeah, I'm hoping that I don't see a lot of people typing, but if you wanted to do an active learning thing, you could also type along with me. So, and the next section, so kind of after the break, we'll do kind of active learning where you're going to be doing like the machine learning thing. All right. Is it done? It's not done yet. All right. So here's the kind of thing that we get. So here it's doing CIDF. Okay, let me. Okay. Oh, that's nice. So here apparently it actually did. Yeah. So here apparently it did the other thing. So it plots the linear regression estimate. Oh, this is like very different. So it does the linear regression estimate over here. It does the random effect over here, which seems like kind of weird, but it seems like quite different actually. So here what you see is the LMER is actually like pulled more towards the mean. So yeah. Okay, I don't really have an explanation for this, but it is different, which is what I was trying to do. So yeah. Okay, all right. So let's do kind of a break until 3:30, and then we'll do machine learning demonstration. And I think it's probably going to take like less than an hour. Take some chocolates if you want. everyone here? I think so. Okay. A natural kind of question about the previous thing is like which of those is testable? Like to be honest, like most of this is not testable on a test just because a lot of it is kind of like use your judgment and then read complex code, which I could not possibly ask on a test or anything like that. So I think one thing I could ask is here's a data generation model that's like proposed by an LLM or like fake proposed by an LLM. Would you accept it or not, and why? Something like that. So for example, like if we're talking about the Pygmalion thing, like I would propose like a data model that just ignores the company. And the expectation would be that you say, but what about the company? Like you can't just ignore it. So that's actually, it did actually propose it at first, right? So it not kind of implicitly just computed the average across the Pygmalion platoons and the non-Pygmalion platoons and just ignored the companies completely. So like I could ask, I suppose, like here's a new data set, here's like either something that Claude actually proposed or something that I pretend Claude proposed, and then ask you to critique it in some way, which like actually did happen here. So that is kind of one thing. I don't think really kind of much of anything else that we hadn't already done previously. So kind of certainly kind of do like generate data from a model, compute the p-value. That's reasonable to the extent that we've done it previously, not today, which today it was all automatic. So this kind of thing, yeah, like I could ask for a story, like just like it did on test one, and hopefully like you saw some kind of live demonstrations of me like critiquing people's models during the presentation, which by the way, like is also fine. Like every model has limitations. I think I think I gave everyone good grades for the presentation. Yeah. All right, so machine learning workflow. Here it's kind of in a way simpler because the assumption here is that you're not trying to do inference, you're just trying to predict as well as possible. So the considerations are different. So in general, what do you do? Well, like you split into training, validation, and test set. One thing that people often get wrong is they kind of just do training, validation, training, test. That means that if you try multiple things, you test each one on the validation set, you pick the one that works the best in the validation set and report it as if that's the final model and the final measurement of how well the model works. Well, you tried multiple things, you pick the one that works the best in the validation set. The outcome on the validation set is now just for that validation set. It's not representative of what you'll get on new data. So the best practice, which like I try to do on my kind of more serious projects, I sometimes neglect to do otherwise, is I take the test set out of my data. I just sequester it somewhere where I physically cannot touch it. When like at least kind of on a different folder, and I do not touch it until I kind of pretty sure that I picked a good model that I actually want to report the results on externally. So that's like the best practice. I don't think anyone is perfect at following that. Yeah. For kind of data that's not like text or image, in general, just like, try linear regression. If it's a continuous outcome, try logistic regression. If it's not a continuous outcome, on some data sets in some situations that are not like actually as frequent as you might imagine, random forests work better. Deep neural networks like almost never actually work better than random forest on just tabular data. If there is like on some kind of tabular data, there is like specialized models that work better, not like in general, but you can look into it. I'm not going to do it in this class, certainly. So on text data, as I was saying to several people on Wednesday, few shot LLMs probably work the best. Yeah.
Question, what's the difference between like few shot, one shot, zero shot?
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good question. So I think I kind of mentioned it, but it bears repeating. So in this context, I mean in context, kind of the in context learning of few shot. So that means that if what you want to do is classify, you tell the model, okay, like here are my labeled examples. The labeled examples are included in the prompt. So like in the prompt, you just say like, here are the labeled examples, and now here are the examples which I want to classify. So that would count as few shot. Zero shot would mean classify, but I'm not giving you labeled examples at all. So just classify with meaningful labels just based on what the model says. And then I guess like few shot implies that there could be many shots, but that's like not the usual situation. But if you have a very large number of labeled examples, then that's probably not a big improvement on few shot if you just plug all of those examples into the prompt. The prompt also like can only be so large. At that point, you might consider what's called fine-tuning the model. These days, it's kind of slightly questionable because the really good frontier models don't actually allow you to fine-tune them. So fine-tuning means you actually change the parameters of the model so that they predict well on the training set. The frontier models generally will not let you do that to them, so their weights are fixed, but they perform better even without fine-tuning sometimes. Yeah.
The way you explain zero shot, you said there's no examples of labeled data.
That's right.
So what's the difference between that and unsupervised learning?
Oh, unsupervised means something different. So unsupervised learning means, so it's something like clustering. It's like separate the data into, clusters that are like, this is one kind of data point, this is another kind of data point, this is another kind of data point without labels. That's just like the technical definition of unsupervised. So what you're saying, I think, is zero shot means the training set doesn't matter, which is true. Like zero shot means you just plug in the test set and you ask like, what kind of example is it? And just like to be clear why it would ever work. So the example that we're gonna do is like get some posts from the McGill subreddit and get some posts from the U of T subreddit. And you could imagine that even without examples, the model could figure out like if it's in French or something, then it's probably from McGill or something like that, even without having any examples, because it has a prior notion of what it means to be in the McGill subreddit. So yeah. And then image data we're not going to do. So like for classification, like what works today is multimodal LLMs. This is all of them as well. Like they're all multimodal. Like you can plug in an image into any modern LLM. That usually works the best, but like it depends, and like it's probably going to be different in 12 months. But just so you know, so we're not doing it anyways. All right. So I do want people to actually do this. So this is not like a literally real data set. So Kaggle, I think most people know. So this is like a website that hosts competitions for precisely those kinds of things generally, where they give you a data set and you try to classify the data set and do as well as possible. And then there's like a secret test set, which you test on. So what's happening, I guess, currently is predicting irrigation need. Here's the data. So they give you kind of a trained CSV and a test CSV, which please download. We'll download all of them. I don't actually have a Kaggle API, so. Hmm? You get it? Okay, accept. Yeah. So I'm like extracting it just to like a new folder or something. All right, so please do that as well. And then just try working in it a little bit. So in general, you could just tell code. I assume like all of you have Codex, not Claude, but you can tell Codex in the same way that they work with code to classify it with logistic regression. Then try some kind of random forest. Try it on the test set. If you like, you can split the test set into kind of validation and test. You don't have to, because they actually have its secret test set, and then see what works the best on the trading set. So please work on that. I do want to kind of walk around as well, just to make sure that everyone has actually done it, or like has started doing it, at least the ones. And then if you're bored, the other task is this. So just like fetch some posts from our McGill and our U of T. So obviously it's cheating to like use U of T and McGill, like literally the terms mentioned in there as predictors. So you have to first fetch the posts, then remove all the obvious keywords. I would suggest just generating the obvious keywords and removing them, and then trying to classify it. If you remember, the way we had done the classification before was you can actually tell Codex or Claude to classify it yourself. You kind of have to force it a little bit. So you have to say, put it in a CSV and now just classify the CSV. And you have to separate into training and test. But yeah, look, please do the Kaggle. Did everyone download the Kaggle stuff? Right. For this. Yeah, and to be clear, so in the training set, there is an irrigation need column. This is what we're predicting. In the test, that column is missing. Sorry, so I misspoke before. So the test doesn't have the column, so you can't actually use it as a test set because you don't know the answers. This is what you need to upload. So you need to separate the training set to test validation.
Like,
Yeah, so yeah, I'm sorry to the people who don't have a laptop. Should have warned you. So I'm gonna do it as well. So this is like a Kaggle data set. I did not work with this data set like extensively. And they usually have like tricks where like if you do logistic regression or something, it's not going to work as well as you might imagine because sometimes there's like outliers in the data, stuff like this. Um, okay, and I've done that. I'll just because like it kind of occurred to me right now, I'll try to see, okay, like what like if you see any outliers, can you so outliers would mean here like there is like a wrong measurement somewhere here. That's like whatever, like a million, which would just make the output like always one regardless of anything else. So I'll just say, okay, like try this, and I'll tell Claude to try it and see if that helps a little bit. So currently our performance is like 84.2. So I'll say put So I'll just like ask it to whatever, suggest something, it'll let me pick whatever. Oh, all right. Okay, so here it suggests clipping. So just like if anything is like below the first percentile or above the 99th percentile, just clip it to the first percentile and the 99th percentile. So what I'll say is like try clipping at 0.1099 percentile, report validation set results. Hopefully it'll help a little bit. Not sure why it says pontificating because it's just running the Python, but okay. All right. So so the accuracy is like literally the same. Those are the same, so it did not help. Let's try like one more thing just to see. So another thing that often happens, and you actually saw this before, is the data is the data is not like on a linear scale in the input. And if you transform it with a log or something, that will work better. So what I'll do is I'll plot all the distributions of each individual dimensions of the table and see what the distribution is like. I'll do that. If any of them don't look Gaussian, then I'll transform them. We'll see. So I'm hoping you're not bored because you're trying something else as well in parallel. I'm also going to try something else in parallel. Are we doing this time? Okay, it made me my histograms. All right. So soil pH. So soil pH. Well, pH is kind of limited, so it's not surprising that it's already on log. So soil moisture. Looks okay. So looks like this. This is again kind of limited. So carbon looks kind of flat actually. Okay. Okay. Oh, there's conductivity again from your project. So that's good. The temperature is range restricted. Humidity is also range restricted. Um, Rainfall actually seems to vary somewhat, so that's a little bit promising. Sunlight, no. Crop type is categorical. Those guys are categorical. Field area also seems kind of wide and non-Gaussian. Previous iteration also like it's not the CPU that's affecting the quality of the meeting, it's me. So okay. So I think kind of the field area is like it kind of makes sense that the effect of field area on the need for irrigation, like either there is nothing there or it's not necessarily linear, right? So there's no reason that the need for irrigation for a small area is going to be like, so for a medium is going to be like between small and large, right? That makes no sense. I mean, it could be, but that would be weird. So I think the highest ROI here is to try to plot this. We'll just see what happens. So I guess it was kind of in the figure, but it's hard to see. Okay, it actually did a random forest. And the validation accuracy is 98, so progress there. I will, so like I consider myself to be kind of done because like it's probably like not a lot. I'll do like one more thing regardless of if my other thing is working out. But what I want to do is I want to look at the field area. Sorry, it's not clicking. Just one sec. And we need to restart. Okay, I guess we'll do it like this. So I want to plot field area separately for different irrigation needs for train split CSV. All right, so what it kind of looks like to me based on this is that I was maybe kind of right, and medium field area kind of predicts is kind of like less high irradiation need than the others, is the best that they can say. Well, this claims that it looks identical. But, so again, a random forest kind of does it automatically anyhow, but just to check. See. So oh, it's doing a test. That's convenient. So okay, so yeah, amazing. So what I can do based on that is I can tell the logistic. Okay, this is going out on the limb here. So what I'm going to tell the logistic regression now is have like a low, medium, high area variable. That's an extra variable, and then plug it into logistic regression. Now we're going to do it like this. So while it's working, whether that's going to work out or not, the last thing that I'm going to try here is I'm going to say, okay, I have a random forest classifier and I have a logistic regression classifier. The logistic regression classifier isn't doing nearly as well as the random forest, but nevertheless, like what sometimes works is combining different models. So the easiest way to combine different models is to just run one, get the output for one, run another, get the output for the other, and then do a logistic regression on top of that. It's like on top of the outputs of the two different models. Oh, it's already, yeah, so it's already comparing. Amazing. We got 100% improvement. But you know, that's not nothing. I suspect that the random forest would figure this out as well. This is of course also just the first try for like low, medium, high. So you might get something different, but you know, the principle holds. We squeeze something out of it. I'll let you do the I'll let you do the combination. So the combination again, you could just tell it, you know, combine the outputs of the model using a logistic regression on top of the outputs that are already there. That might or might not squeeze out a little bit more. So on those Kaggle data sets, so this is like not a real Kaggle. I think it might actually be a real one. On those Kaggle data sets, like people, like that's what people do on those data sets is they squeeze out kind of a little bit of a point of a percentage because the point is to be at the top of the leaderboard. So that's like a legitimate thing to try to do. In reality, like, of course, like, you know, if you're working at like Amazon or whatever, and you're trying to figure out which ads to display and you're displaying them to, a billion users, then 0.0001 of a billion is still a lot. So you can still make money. So yeah. Okay, all right. So this is this one. I think it's getting late, so I'll just do the other one myself in front of you, but you're welcome to code along as well. I think it would be educational. So just do a new one. I'll do Waterloo, not Miguel, whatever. Oh, and I got rid of the Claude window, which is nice. So here I'm gonna get a data set that's a text data set. You can still do logistic regression. So if you have text data sets, like one way to do logistic regression is is this keyword in there, then it's like one dimension of the vector. Is this keyword in there, that's another dimension of the vector as well. So that kind of works, but like not really well. So an LLM usually works a lot better. So let me just scrape the data set. So in the meantime, we'll try to come up with keywords to exclude. So trying to classify R U of T versus R Waterloo posts button right away. And you suggest a list of keywords that they should exclude. I'm gonna try to kind of work with it. I think this is what I would actually do. Okay, so U of T, Toronto. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Uh, I'm not even sure what EV1 is. Okay. Uh, okay, so casing punctuation, I would say everything. So geese, if you don't know, Waterloo is famous for having a lot of geese on campus. It's also like a campus meme, but it seems like this is a valid predictor. Like if people are talking about geese, then it's Waterloo. That's like something that is fair to include. So I would say make a list of things to exclude with all kinds of casing, but don't exclude geese. Oh, it already has U of T posts. It's presumably working on the Waterloo posts now. Okay, so this is exclude terms. Yeah, and it has, yeah. All right. And my Waterloo and U of T posts are apparently ready. So that's good. So clean up UFT posts, JSON, and Waterloo posts, JSON. So like into new files and exclude stuff as listed and exclude terms.py. So exclude terms.py is the file that they made there. So in the meantime, I'm gonna work on porting it to class. I think it's gonna be done very soon, so I'll wait for it to be done. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I think the scraper for Waterloo is still working. Okay, the Waterloo. Okay, so Waterloo post is now done. Okay. Okay, so the classification thing is I'm gonna tell it. So I'm gonna tell it to run kind of a small. So I'm gonna tell it to do a training test separation. I'm gonna first do a 0-shot test set, see where it gets me, and then hold on, and then we'll oh, because it's slash Waterloo, not U Waterloo. Okay. Okay, it's a good thing it noticed. So I'll just tell it to clean. All right, so it's gonna be just like a minute, I think. So I think we'll wait. I'm sorry if this is like slightly boring, but hopefully it's a little bit exciting. See what happens. So yeah. All right. Okay. So title. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so separate the clean files into test train, like a 30-70 split or something like this. Okay. So what I'll say is like 430 for the first. So here, like I'm gonna try to force it to do its own classification. So the way I'll do it is I'll just tell it to dump 30 from the train from Waterloo 30 from U of T to a new file without keeping the labels and just shuffle them. So dump. So I'll make it shuffle because like I want to plug it in into itself and I want it to not know the answers. So that's kind of how I'm doing it is I'm keeping an answer key, but in a separate file. All right. Okay, that's a bit of a problem because it didn't actually keep. I mean, like maybe it knows that like the first that 0 to 29 is U of T or something like this, but okay, okay, so see what we do. Okay. Yeah, I think it was, but whatever. So now we know. So now we have the answers, and we also have the sample posts. Post sample.json. Okay, so sample.json still has the subreddit. So what we're gonna do is from sample.json remove all info except except the text. Dump it to a new file. Again, sorry, this is like taking a while, but at the same time, like if you haven't done this before, I feel like this is the appropriate speed maybe to see it. Because like I could do a slideshow, but I feel like that might be even less useful. But I am doing it live in fairness. Okay, so we have sample text. All right. So we have this. So we're gonna try to do it with 0 shot. So the problem is if I do it in this window, actually part of the prompt is gonna be this window. So I'm just gonna close Claude. And I'm gonna tell it. So make sure you don't read, well, like, so read anything except sample text JSON. So in a new file, indicate your guess about each posts. The guesses can only be from RU of T or from our Waterloo. So this is not like amazing methodology. It could cheat, I guess, but it probably wouldn't. Again, kind of if I weren't cheap, I would plug in an API key and actually do it with an external thing. Here, like the reason I'm doing it here is just that I already paid a flat rate for using Claude here. So it's kind of free for me. And you can do it in Codex as well. Okay, it's thinking. It's a lot of thinking. But I like that it shows this time to not yell at me like, where's your API key? You need to pay me, which happened last time I tried it. Yeah, this is probably actually pretty easy to guess. Like I could do it. I don't know if you guys can, because like you were like in grad school. So like, do you know that like this is U of T and this is Waterloo because of the course code? So like the Waterloo course code is 4 letters, the U of T course code is 3. All right. Yes, I think kind of the last thing. Okay, so have guesses.md. So I'll just say check guesses.md against. So our answers were in sample indices, right? So just like to make sure that it's not hallucinating, because in this case, I think it might, although probably not. So I'll just make it do a plan. So like first, dump uh, guesses and correct answers into CSV files in the same format. Then just do a computation. Python. So like in Python, just to make sure that it's not like trying to do math in its head. So yeah, so here kind of I suspect that actually like few shot. Yeah. All right. So here I'm guessing that doing few shot is not actually going to help, although you could try. It seems like it's already doing pretty well. So it's getting like 87% accuracy. But you might consider kind of just looking like if you were doing like a genuine flow, like first of all, it's unclear why you would want to classify them. Like probably like one reason might be that you want to actually figure out what makes one different from another, which would mean that you would need to do an analysis on top of this. You might also consider just like taking out the obvious cues, like whatever I figure out for just looking at it, like the course codes or whatever. But yeah, 87, pretty good. Cool. All right. So I think I have meetings with most of you scheduled still. If you have a meeting with me at 6 o'clock, wherever it is, I'm free until 5, so we can talk now. Otherwise, I will see you. So I'm sorry that the midterm grades are still not there. So I know that Monday is like the drop date, so I will make sure to get them to you before that. Otherwise, we'll be in touch. It was a great time. And we'll talk again. Oh, actually, no, like we'll see you at the exam. So yeah. Okay. All right. See ya. Bye. Thanks.